That dress, a modest design, nothing extravagant. The King family had never tolerated anything less than perfection. In the middle of their lavish engagement party, the insults landed squarely on the bride. While the groom forced a polite smile, unwilling to defend her, whispers rippled through the crowd. A poor girl reaching too high. She'll be cast aside soon. Everyone expected her to bow her head to play the quiet outsider. No one knew that with a single tap on her phone, the very $950 million contract the King family bragged about could disappear in seconds. Isabella Torres stood at the center of the glittering ballroom, her hands folded neatly in front of her plain cream dress. The chandelier light caught the silver clip holding back her dark hair. Her face, free of heavy makeup, looked too soft for this crowd dripping with diamonds and judgment. She wasn't what they expected. Not for Nathaniel King, heir to a vast real estate empire. Not for this room full of senators, CEOs, and old money with sharper tongues than morals. The party was held in the King estate, a mansion of marble floors and gold-trimmed walls. Every guest there was someone with influence, wealth, and an appetite for gossip. Isabella didn't flinch under their gaze. She stood tall, her champagne untouched, her composure steady, the kind of strength that comes from walking through storms and surviving them. Then came Victoria King, Nathaniel's mother. She swept toward Isabella in a gown of deep emerald silk, every movement deliberate. At 55, her face was polished by surgery, her smile flawless but empty. She stopped in front of Isabella, her voice loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Sweetheart, that dress, and it's just not up to our standards. Did you borrow it from a thrift shop?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. A man in a tailored suit whispered to his wife, "She looks like she wandered in from a bus stop." Isabella's fingers tightened slightly around her glass, but her expression didn't change. She stayed silent. Her calmness seemed to annoy Victoria even more. She turned to a woman beside her and said loudly, "Imagine my son with someone so ordinary." A cousin of the King's, known for her sharp tongue, stepped closer with a fake smile. "Oh, darling, you must tell us where you shop." I could use a laugh. The group chuckled, pleased with their cruelty. Isabella set her glass down gently and met the woman's eyes. Her voice was quiet, but each word landed like steel wrapped in silk. "I shop where people don't need to buy their confidence." The cousin froze, her smile faltering. A few guests looked away awkwardly, but the moment passed quickly when someone muttered, "Well, at least she has nerve?" The laughter resumed. No one noticed the flicker of fire in Isabella's eyes. Across the room, Nathaniel stood near the bar, adjusting his cufflinks, pretending not to notice. At 29, with his polished charm and practiced grin, he was used to admiration, not confrontation. But he said nothing. Didn't move, didn't defend her. His silence said everything. A woman with glittering diamonds leaned toward her friend. "She's obviously after his money. Why else would he choose her?" A balding man with a Rolex added, "She's got no class. Nathan's slumming it." Isabella drew a breath, steady and silent, then placed her glass on a passing tray. Her movements were slow, deliberate. Voiceover break. "Hey, before we go further, if this story hits home for you, if you've ever felt that sting of being judged for who you are, take a second. Like this video, leave a comment below and subscribe. We grow stronger together, one story at a time. All right, let's continue. The ridicule didn't stop. Adrian Cole, the King family's lawyer, approached with his slick grin and expensive suit. "Isabella, right? If you really loved Nathan, you'd have brought something to the table. Maybe a ring with the Torres name. Though I suppose that's worth very little." Laughter broke out again. Isabella met his gaze, calm and unshaken. "You seem very sure of that," she said softly. He smirked. "Oh, honey, I can spot a gold digger a mile away." The words hung in the air, sharp and ugly. The crowd fed on them, whispering louder. Then a young man, one of Nathaniel's friends, raised his voice from across the room. "Hey, Isabella, do you even know which fork to use for the salad?" The guests roared with laughter. Isabella turned slowly, picked up a fork from the nearest table, twirled it in her fingers, and placed it down with a quiet clink. "I know enough," she said, "to eat without making a scene." The laughter faded. The man looked away, his cheeks red. From the far side of the room, another woman in red whispered to her friend, Look at her shoes. Scuffed. She doesn't belong here. A man with a loud tie snickered. Nathan's mother will have her gone before the wedding. Isabella's hand brushed the edge of her clutch, a small motion grounding herself. She didn't look at Nathaniel, who was now laughing with a group of men, his back turned. The air in the room felt heavy, cold. Victoria circled back, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. Dear, you must feel so out of place. Why don't you sit in the corner? Less noticeable. Isabella looked up, her voice low but steady. I'm fine where I am. The room paused, then laughter rippled again, uneasy this time. An older man, a retired banker with a whiskey glass in hand, decided to take his turn. You're brave to stand there, girl. But bravery doesn't buy a seat at this table. You're out of your league. Isabella turned toward him slowly, her expression calm but her gaze sharp. Funny, she said, her voice smooth and cutting. I always thought leagues were for people too afraid to play the real game. The man's smirk faltered. A few guests exchanged uncertain glances. Victoria's smile thinned. Sensing the balance shifting, the night dragged on, and the comments grew bolder. A young woman, maybe one of Nathaniel's cousins, stepped forward. You're brave to show up looking like that, she said with a sneer. Most girls would have at least tried. Her friend laughed beside her. Isabella's fingers twitched, but she stayed composed. Her eyes met the woman's. Tried what exactly? The question landed heavy. The woman's smile faltered. Before anyone could respond, Victoria raised her glass, her voice ringing through the hall. To my son's future, and to a bride who will learn her place. The toast brought tears to many eyes, but Isabella didn't move. She stood still, her face unreadable, as if waiting for something unseen. A young waiter, nervous and unsteady, stumbled slightly as he passed her. The tray of drinks in his hands trembled. A woman nearby, wrapped in furs despite the warm evening, let out a sharp, mocking laugh. Careful, boy. Don't ruin her dress. It's probably the nicest thing she owns. The crowd chuckled and the waiter's cheeks turned red as he muttered an apology. Isabella reached out, steadying the tray with a calm, sure hand. Her touch was gentle but firm. She looked at the woman, her voice soft but clear. It's not the dress that matters. It's the person wearing it. The waiter gave her a grateful glance before hurrying off, but the woman just scoffed and turned to her friends. She's got a mouth on her. I'll give her that. Isabella's lips pressed into a thin line, but she said nothing. Her eyes swept across the room as if memorizing every face, every whisper. A memory flickered. Years ago, a little girl sat cross-legged on a wooden floor, her tiny hands tracing the edge of a book. Her father, a man with kind eyes and a steady voice, knelt beside her. You don't need to shout, Isabella, he said, resting a hand on her shoulder. You don't need to prove anything. Just be. The echo of his words lingered as Isabella's gaze caught the glint of headlights outside the mansion. The car looked just like her father's, black, modest, but powerful. She blinked and the memory vanished, replaced by the hum of laughter and the sting of 100 judging eyes. The King family wasn't finished. Adrian, riding the energy of the crowd, leaned closer and said loudly, You know, Nathan, she's cute, but she's dragging you down. No pedigree. No connections. Nathaniel gave a weak laugh and rubbed the back of his neck. Come on, Adrian. Give her a break. But his tone lacked conviction and everyone noticed. Isabella's jaw tightened just for a second before her calm returned. Her eyes drifted over the guests again, steady and searching. You talk a lot about connections, she said, her voice unwavering. What's yours worth? The question hit the air like a stone in still water. Adrian's smirk faltered. The crowd shifted uneasily but stayed silent, drawn to the spectacle they'd created. Then another woman stepped forward. A socialite with a designer bag and nails painted a perfect, poisonous red. She smiled sweetly, ready to strike. Isabella, honey, do you even have a job? Or are you just planning to live off Nathan's trust fund? The question sparked laughter and gasps. Nathaniel looked down, unable to meet her eyes. Isabella's fingers tapped the edge of the table, once, twice, before she looked up. Her voice was even, but her words cut clean. I work for what I have. Can you say the same? The socialite's smile tightened and she flicked her hair, but the laughter around her softened. A few guests looked away, suddenly unsure. Victoria took the stage, her voice booming through the microphone. Let's talk about the future of the King family. We've just secured a $950 million deal with Torres Global Tech, run by some mysterious CEO who never shows his face. She paused, soaking in the applause. That's the kind of power we bring to this family. Not everyone can keep up, the jab was clear. Guests laughed again, glancing toward Isabella. She lifted her glass, her brow arched slightly. A deal with whom? She asked, her tone calm, almost amused. Adrian jumped in eagerly. Torres Global Tech, biggest tech conglomerate in the country. You wouldn't know them. A faint, almost invisible smile touched Isabella's lips. She took a slow sip of champagne. The crowd missed it, too caught up mocking the woman they thought didn't belong. A man in a pinstriped suit, known for arrogance as much as wealth, stepped closer. His tone was loud and patronizing. I've seen girls like you before. They try to sneak into our world, but they always crash and burn. He gestured around the room as though it were his kingdom. Isabella met his gaze without flinching. She reached into her clutch, drew out a simple silver pen and twirled it between her fingers. Some of us don't need to sneak, she said quietly. The man's laugh was hollow, his confidence cracking. A few nearby guests fell silent, sensing something shift. The pen glimmered in the light, carrying a strange, commanding weight. The night pressed on. Isabella moved through the crowd like a calm current. Quiet, graceful, unshakable. A man in a velvet jacket brushed against her, spilling his drink. Watch it, sweetheart, he snapped, brushing past as if she were invisible. Isabella stepped aside, serene as ever, and set her clutch on a nearby table. Her fingers lingered on the edge, grazing the corner of a plain white business card stamped with the Torres Global logo. She didn't take it out, she didn't need to. Her eyes flickered with quiet resolve, a spark of decision forming beneath her calm exterior. No one noticed. They were too busy laughing, too busy tearing her down. But Isabella was done waiting. The wedding day arrived faster than anyone expected. The King estate had transformed into a spectacle of luxury. White roses lined every path, and a massive tent shimmered beneath the sun, ready to host 1,000 guests dressed to impress. At the altar, Isabella stood quietly. Her gown was simple yet elegant, a soft ivory that framed her perfectly without screaming for attention. No veil, no jewelry, just her. The priest began the vows, his voice steady when Victoria suddenly stood. Her face hardened with indignation. Before my son agrees, she said sharply, tell us, how much wealth does your family even have? The words echoed through the tent, and laughter rippled through the guests. A woman in a feathered hat leaned forward. Yeah, what's she bringing to the table? Nothing. Another voice, sharp and mocking, added, she's not fit for this house. A young fashion influencer with 1 million followers lifted her phone and snapped a photo of Isabella standing at the altar. This is going viral, she announced loudly. Caption, when you show up to a king wedding looking like a thrift store reject. The crowd burst into laughter as cameras flashed, capturing every second of Isabella's humiliation. She didn't move. Her hands stayed clasped, her eyes locking onto the influencer. Make sure you get my good side, she said evenly. The influencer hesitated, her phone lowering slightly, but the laughter around her pushed her to keep recording. Isabella brushed the fabric of her dress, a small grounding motion that steadied her heart amid the storm. Nathaniel shifted uneasily, glancing from his mother to Isabella. Mother, maybe you're right, he murmured. The words hit her like a blade. Her fingers curled into her palms, but she didn't flinch. Victoria seized the moment, her voice rising with triumph. This marriage would be a stain on our family name. The whispers grew louder. She's a nobody, someone said. Nathan deserves better. Another agreed. Isabella's eyes turned cold like steel under moonlight. She didn't cry, didn't argue. Her silence spoke louder than all their words. A man in a bow tie, a tech mogul famous for his arrogance, leaned toward his wife and smirked. I bet she's never even been in a boardroom, he said. Probably thinks a merger is something you order at a diner. Laughter spread again. Isabella's hand paused mid-motion. She turned slightly, her gaze locking onto him. I know a bad deal when I see one, she said quietly. Her words landed with precision. The man's smile faded and he looked away, pretending to check his phone. But the crowd was too busy laughing to notice. Then Isabella moved. She stepped forward, her heels tapping against the polished floor, and took the microphone from the priest. Her voice was calm and deliberate, measured like a verdict. "Thank you," she said, "for showing me your true faces. This wedding ends here." Gasps rippled through the tent. Nathaniel's face turned red with anger. "How dare you embarrass me in front of everyone?" he shouted, stepping toward her. Isabella didn't retreat. "I'm not running away," she said, her voice sharp and icy. "I'm canceling it." The crowd laughed, thinking she'd lost her composure. "She's delusional," a man muttered. "She threw away her golden ticket," a woman sneered. Isabella said nothing. Her movements were steady as she turned toward the edge of the altar, but Victoria wasn't finished. She stepped forward, her tone dripping with venom. "No house, no fortune. You think leaving us means anything?" Adrian, standing beside her, smirked. "Torres Global is tied to that $950 million deal with King Group. Without us, she has no future." Nathaniel joined in, his voice bitter. "Without me, you're nothing." The guests joined the cruelty, their words blending into a storm of scorn. "She's just a failure pretending to have pride," someone sneered. Isabella reached into her clutch, her fingers brushing her phone. She didn't look at them. She didn't need to. Her face was calm, her eyes focused, as if she was already seeing the next chapter of her life. A woman in a glittering gown, one of the wealthiest in the crowd, lifted her wine glass high. "To the girl who thought she could play in our world and lost," she said, smiling viciously. The crowd cheered, but Isabella met her gaze, tilting her head slightly. "Some games," she said softly, "aren't worth winning." And in that moment, every cruel laugh began to sound hollow. The woman's glass trembled in her hand and she sat down quickly, her face flushed with embarrassment. Isabella's fingers closed around her phone, her thumb hovering over the screen, a silent promise in her steady grip. She pressed a button, and the massive screen behind the altar flickered to life. A bold, official statement appeared. "Torres Global Tech terminates $950 million contract with King Group due to fraud and disrespect." The tent fell silent. Adrian's face went pale. Victoria's hand flew to her chest, her jeweled rings glinting as she trembled. Nathaniel sank into a chair, his mouth open in shock. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Whispers spread like wildfire. "What, she's Torres Global?" Isabella stepped forward, her voice calm and unwavering. "I don't need this family. I am Isabella Torres, the CEO you mocked." Her words hit like thunder. The tent erupted in chaos. Years earlier, a teenage Isabella had sat in a boardroom beside her father. He'd handed her a pen, his voice steady and kind. "This company will be yours one day, Bella. But remember, it's not about power. It's about truth." She had nodded, clutching that pen like a promise. Now standing in the tent, her fingers brushed the same pen tucked inside her clutch. She didn't pull it out. The memory was enough. The King family began to crumble. Victoria fell to her knees, her voice trembling. "Forgive us, it was a misunderstanding." "Please restore the contract!" Adrian, sweating, stepped forward. "We can renegotiate, just overlook our mistake." Nathaniel grabbed Isabella's hand, desperation flooding his face. "I'm sorry, I still love you." Even the guests switched sides, their voices syrupy with fake admiration. "We've always respected you," one lied. Isabella looked at them, her eyes distant and cold, as if seeing right through their masks. She gently pulled her hand free from Nathaniel's grip. Her silence said more than words ever could. A man in the back, a small investor in King Group, stood up, his voice shaking. "You think you can walk away and ruin us? You'll regret this." Isabella paused at the edge of the altar, turning just enough for him to see her profile. "Regret is for people who make bad choices," she said evenly. He sat down, pale and defeated, as whispers of panic filled the air. Phones buzzed with notifications, stock alerts, breaking news, updates. The King Empire was collapsing in real time. Isabella didn't look back. She walked with quiet authority, her clutch tucked under her arm. Reaching the microphone once more, she spoke clearly. "Torres Global will transfer the deal to your rival corporation." The words struck like a shockwave. Phones lit up across the tent as headlines broke. King Group stock crashes. Guests scrambled to their feet, rushing for the exits, desperate to escape the fallout. Headlines exploded online. Bride humiliated? CEO strikes back. King Empire collapses. Isabella stood still amid the chaos, calm and composed. She didn't smile or gloat, she simply existed, her presence enough to silence the storm. But Nathaniel wasn't done. He staggered up, his face twisted with rage. "No one will ever love you for real, only your money," he screamed. "You'll die alone." The tent fell quiet again. A few old rivals nodded in agreement. "That cold CEO will never know happiness," one muttered. For a moment, Isabella's fingers paused on her clutch, her eyes flickering with something raw, something human. But she said nothing. As she walked toward the exit, a woman in a silver dress, one of Victoria's friends, hurled one last insult. "You'll always be alone, no matter how much money you have." Isabella stopped for a brief moment. She opened her clutch and pulled out a small worn photo, a younger version of herself standing beside her father, both smiling. "I'm never alone," she said softly, her voice unshakable. She tucked the photo away and continued walking. The woman's expression crumpled in silence. Swept through the tent. Then from the crowd, a tall man stepped forward. His dark hair framed a face marked with quiet confidence. His suit was simple but sharp, the rival CEO James Harper, head of Harper Dynamics. He took Isabella's hand, his voice steady and low. "We didn't just sign a deal," he said. "I want to build a real family, with you." Gasps filled the air once again, but this time they carried awe instead of scorn. Isabella's eyes softened as she looked at him. She didn't speak, but her hand tightened in his. The crowd parted as they walked out together. Applause rising behind them, a wave of respect, disbelief, and something like redemption. She stepped into a waiting limo, the door closing with a soft thud, leaving the King family standing in the ruins of their own arrogance. The fallout came quickly. Victoria was shunned by her social circle, her name erased from guest lists overnight. Adrian lost his job, his reputation tied to the failed deal. Nathaniel's face flooded tabloids, his charm replaced with shame. Even the influencer in the red dress lost her sponsorship after her cruel comments went viral. The consequences weren't loud, they were inevitable. Like gravity pulling a stone to earth, Isabella never looked back. She didn't need to. Her silence now carried the weight of truth. Years ago, her father had hugged her and said softly, "You're enough, Bella, always, now." As the limo moved through the city lights, she glanced at James beside her. His hand was still wrapped around hers, steady and warm. The photo might have been gone, but the feeling remained. She leaned back, shoulders relaxing for the first time that day. The world kept turning. The King family faded, just another cautionary tale, and Isabella? She kept building, kept living, stronger than ever. For everyone who's ever been looked down on, judged, or silenced, her story carried a quiet promise. You're enough. You always were. The fight isn't loud. It's steady. And it's yours. Where are you watching from? Leave a comment below, and follow to walk with me through heartbreak, betrayal, and healing.